Hi, this is Gregory Walker, Global Creative Executive Director for the Brothers Network, established in 2007 to amplify the brilliance of who and what Black men are, like our guest today, who is both a poet and a playwright. Without further ado, I'd love for you to introduce yourself, Dave.
Ooh. Hi, I'm Dave Harris. I'm a writer originally from West Philly, currently living in Los Angeles. And yeah, I write poetry, I write for theater, film, and TV, and everything in between.
Well, that's great. I learned about you through the BBC. There was a great story on you and your work. And so I'm generally shy, as most people know, and I don't sort of reach out to people randomly or just walk up to them and start talking. But that's exactly what happened. I didn't see you in person, but your story is so fascinating. And I had heard about your play, Tambo and Bones. Would you be kind enough to tell us the tenets of Tambo and Bones?
Yeah, so Tambo and Bones is a play about two characters who are trapped in a minstrel show, and they come to find out they're trapped in a minstrel show, and they have to figure out how to break out and reach some future of their design. It's the first part is the minstrel show, the second part is a rap concert, and the third part takes place 400 years in the future after a white genocide. And yeah, it's a crazy ass play that we had a lot of fun doing it. We did it in New York and LA. We just finished doing it in London this past summer, and then we're doing it in Chicago. It opens next Saturday.
That's fantastic. So it sounds like a little bit of Afrofuturism,
Yeah.
with some historical context and some heritage thrown in there as well.
Yeah.
I love that combination of the hip hop aspect of it because makes it very contemporary, what's happening right now, but yet it's also educational. Tell me what you hope that the viewer will walk away with when he or she sees Tambo and Bones.
Yeah, so the play was written, it's a play that's very much about race, capitalism, and identity. And essentially I've always been really fascinated with minstrelsy as a form, as an American form. I think it's something that has a particular history, yes, and also gets sort of unfairly characterized in a lot of way and not necessarily treated within the context of its time period in a lot of senses. So there was something to me that was interesting about performance and Blackness and the performative aspects of race, and how being paid for the performance of your race changes the nature of the story. So the play is sort of charting a path from minstrelsy as a form of Black artistic capitalism to then what the future of that might look like. So essentially it's asking what happens when you're selling a part of your identity on stage to a paying audience, and what are the power dynamics of that. So for me, the play is, I mean, it's a concert, it's a minstrel show, it's so performative that like ultimately what I expect for audiences is just to have like an amazing, really fun, crazy time where they're just like, what's happening? Where am I? There's so much spectacle on stage until we get to the end, and then you suddenly have to experience catharsis and then reevaluate, oh, what did we just go through to get here?
When you use minstrelsy as a way to tell stories, who do you look to in history as playwrights? Who do you think about who also use minstrel sort of storytelling? I mean, it was what was the beginning of Blacks on the theater and in the theater. And let's explain what minstrelsy is for those who may not know.
Yeah, so minstrelsy was essentially it's a form of American theater started in the mid 19th century. Actually, well, earlier than that, I guess.
I think about Birth of a Nation.
What's that?
I think of Birth of a Nation as a way of concretizing minstrelsy, but go on.
Oh yeah, no, Birth of a Nation came later. That was like early 20th century. The minstrelsy, I'm speaking specifically of the blackface minstrelsy, which started with white performers wearing blackface and performing dumbed down ideas of Black tropes for white audiences who would come and pay and laugh and have a good time. And then eventually maybe 20 or so years after that, Black performers started performing minstrel shows, which really fascinated me, because we think of minstrel shows as something that purely exists in white imaginations, and yet when you look through the history of minstrel performers, there's so many Black minstrel performers. You know, there's Billy Cursange, George Walker, Burt Williams, all these people who have specific relationships to the craft. And when you read through, I remember I was doing a lot of research in different archives of minstrel of Black minstrel performance specifically. And there's one particular Billy Kersands who you can read like his joke book of like 300 jokes that he would perform in his minstrel shows. And you read them, and reading them, I was like, this is actually kind of funny. Like he has one joke, which is in like 1878 or something, where he's talking to an audience and he's like, where does the Black man go when he hurts his leg? To Africa, where the knee grows. And I'm like, that's clever as hell. Like, you know, but I feel like there's such a fear around acknowledging like agency in minstrel performance. So for me,
not to put you on the spot, do you have another one of those? Because that's really funny.
If I go through when I was reading the book, I took a bunch of photos of like pages from the book. So sure. I'm sure I have more, but that's the one that stuck with me the most. But it's back to back. It's like, what do you call this? What happens when this? And it's you know, I mean, like humor has always been such a part of Black lineage and Black coping and Black innovation in this country. But in a lot of ways, like that performance also begins around the minstrel era, which I find really fascinating and really different from how minstrelsy is talked about. You know, when white people talk about it, when a lot of people talk about it, and I was like, oh, there's agency here. What happens when we observe Black artistic agency starting from a time we think of ourselves as not having agency?
Yeah, I think we always had agency. It was just sort of not always known we had agency. That gets me to our conversation about Blackout, or Black Nights at theaters called Blackout, started on Broadway in 2019. When your show was up in London, in the UK, there was some conversation and controversy about having your show be a blackout, which I love because we in Black spaces get to laugh at where does the leg, when the leg gets cut off, the Negro, where the Negro, that's funny as hell. And would I feel as comfortable laughing in front of a white person? I probably would, having grown up in Connecticut, but others may not. So tell me about that controversy and how that made you feel as a playwright.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing was so absurd and entertaining, and I mean, and there was actual violence inside of it, which was messy. Essentially what happened was so Tambo and Bones is a pretty loud Black aggressive show, and it was going up at Stratford East, which is a theater in London that's known for doing particularly radical work and work that often centers that often has a lot of black artists in it, and it's in a Blacker neighborhood than a lot of the other theaters. So I think when we announced that we were doing a Blackout night, which is essentially a performance that's only for Black audiences, the British right-wing media latched onto that quite hard. And this article came out like demonizing us. People were accusing us of starting the new apartheid, which it was very interesting to like go on Twitter and to hear like Piers Morgan and his accent being like Tambo and Bones by Dave Harris. You know, it's very, very jarring. And they're just debating like, why are we excluding white people? Why are we doing all this? The whole thing is so absurd, but it got to the point where like, you know, the theater was receiving like death threats. You know, like we had a white supremacist buy out the whole front row of our Black theater night because he was going to give away tickets on Twitter. You know, it was like a real threat.
From a marketing perspective and sales perspective.
And also, yeah, I was like, you know, I mean, I think the theater was a little shell shocked about it because they were like, they had never gotten that much press before, and suddenly it was like a lot of press coming from, you know, these like Good Morning Britain, all of these things, but it sort of sparked a wider conversation about the play, because I was like, if you're this pissed off at the notion of having a Black audience, like wait until you see the actual play and hear the number of times we say the phrase white genocide. You're gonna, you know, save your anger. But the night, and we were almost canceled the night because there was such real threat, you know, like from like Twitter, social media, you know, in their inbox. The box office staff was really afraid, so many things. But then we ended up doing it, and it was like our best performance of the run,
Fantastic.
And like there was
Fantastic.
nobody, news crew showed up, but like no white supremacists came to crash it. It was just like an amazing audience who was ready to see have a
Well,
great time.
that genocide warning was enough to keep those white supremacists away from
They were like, "What's gonna happen in this play?"
maybe they thought there was a booby trap, They were
Yeah,
saying,
it's just, this is where the revolution begins.
yeah,
I'm like,
I
no,
can.
the play is a comedy. Can you imagine like a bunch of theater nerds are the ones starting apartheid? Like, get out of here. We're we're doing shows.
Hey, listen. Everything is possible these days, right? Folks who started apartheid were not necessarily good people, but they were definitely nerdy. That's for sure. That is for sure. I think about F.W. de Klerk and sustaining apartheid in South Africa for so long, and certainly apartheid in America, quite frankly, continues. And not to make this conversation in any way political or biased, but we are on the cusp of something that is revolutionary. And culture is the only thing that keeps us laughing or engaged or informed, and not necessarily paying attention to CNN or BBC every day, because we would see the potential of the world falling apart, not only based on economics and class, but also on race, But certainly we can see where capitalism has had its impact
Oh yeah.
on our society and the arts as well. When you were chatting and you were getting excited, I saw you moving your head a little bit like this, so I can see you still have your West Philadelphia in you. Uh, can you tell me where in West Philadelphia, as specific as you'd like to be, where you grew up and where you went to school in West Philly?
Yeah, so my family geography is kind of a hot mess. I was born in Los Angeles, which is where my dad's half of the family is from, and then through a series of family secrets, and that was one, we moved back to Philly, which is where my mom's family is from.
I see.
We we grew up very poor, so we moved kind of every year almost. A lot of that time was in West Philly, sort of around like 55th and Lancaster, like around there. But then we would like pop out and be in like Ridley for a minute, and we come back to Philly, and then we end up in Upper Darby, and then we come back like and then like had other family in like North Philly. So it just was a whole hot mess, but like scenic tour of the city. But
Sure.
Philly for me it's where my my mom's side of the family is, which is sort of like my primary family in a lot of ways, because dad's half is the hot mess half. But
Yeah. But now you're in Los Angeles with dad and the hot mess side, so maybe
now,
not so much a hot mess now. I always
oh
amplify,
no,
elevate
still
black men and black
still
dads.
hot mess, still
Okay.
hot mess, but we're working on it. Hot mess, but we're working
We'll talk about that offline one day.
on it.
So
Yeah.
you spent some time in my home state of Connecticut. So after New Haven, after Philadelphia, you went on to New Haven.
Yeah. I went to undergrad. I went to undergrad at Yale, and then so I was there for 4 years, and then lived in Pittsburgh for a year, and then went to grad school at UC San Diego, and then moved to LA.
Yeah, that's quite a trajectory. So you've seen different parts of the country, the Mid Atlantic, certainly the Northeast, and the West Coast again, from where you were born. So you kind of came back home. Tell us in these few remaining moments what is coming up for you that you can share, and that you want to share with many accolades and awards you've already received. So again, thank you for taking time with us today to share a little bit more. But we want to continue to amplify your work and what you do and your vision for the future of theater. Tell us what you're working on.
Yeah, so upcoming's Tambo and Bones is going to be in Chicago, at the Den Theater with Refracted Theater Company running. We open Saturday, October 14th, and it's running through until November, I believe.
Perfect. That's on our website at www.thebrothersnetwork.art for those who want more information. It's right on our homepage, so you can go there to see that information.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun, wild ride, as always is.
Will you be in Chicago for Talkback at all?
I'm going there for opening night, so I'll be there. I'll be in Chicago the 13th and 14th. 13th through
Perfect.
15th. Yes.
Okay.
But so I'll be there for that. The WGA strike just ended, so I'm about to hop back into TV and film world, which is very exciting, and it all happened very suddenly. And that's sort of the picture of my life right now. I'm sort of in workshop mode for different plays, and then writing back on like film and TV.
Can you tell us about your past play that you wrote?
Yes. Which one? There's a couple.
There's a couple. Which one top of mind for you?
Yes. Well, right before I was in London, I did a play called Incendiary in DC. And then before that, when we were doing Tambo and Bones in New York and LA, I did another play called Exception to the Rule that was at Roundabout in New York. I think
I
actually,
love that. I love that title and the premise as well. Exception to the rule. I think that speaks to so much
yeah.
in our current society.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that one is it'll have a performance in Pittsburgh in, I want to say it's in February I'm really excited for this one actually. There's a Black Youth Theater Company called Alumni Theater Company that I used to work at when I lived there. That's full of just some of the most amazing young artists I've ever worked with in my entire life. And the play is written about 6 Black high schoolers, and it's going to be performed by kids that age in a full professional production. And so I'm really excited to get back there for that.
That's fantastic. I love this idea of returning for you back to California, returning back to Philadelphia. But let's talk for just a moment about your time here in Philadelphia with Philadelphia Young Playwrights. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, so Philly Young Playwrights, I sort of stumbled into, never expecting it to become a career. In 7th grade, our drama teacher made us all write plays and submit them to Philadelphia Young Playwrights, and they do an annual playwriting contest.
Right.
And the play I wrote won that contest. So then I ended up like getting really involved with the organization. But it felt like sort of just like, oh, like a fun like week-long summer camp here and there. It never was like a thing that I was like, but like practically I was basically writing a play or two, like a full-length play or two a year from 7th grade through high school, which
Wow.
it was like a hugely impactful thing, but it never registered as such, because when you're a kid you just do things because you're told, or
You don't know.
yeah. But like I remember like in 8th grade, Kiara Hudes, who's an amazing playwright, she wrote In the Heights with Lin-Manuel Miranda, like brought us
Sure.
all to go see In the Heights on Broadway, which was the first time I'd ever seen the show in New York. And we got to like tour the set and like go backstage and like talk to her and Lynn. And at the time, I'm not gonna say it meant nothing, but it was huge. I love that show so much, but it was like, oh yeah, we're popping over to New York. This is gonna be like a fun trip. And now I look back and I'm like, oh, that's a formative memory. Wow. But that was sort of my whole life through high school. Every summer I'd go back to that organization for a couple weeks and write some scenes, write a play, write something for their competition.
Yeah. Yeah. We at the Brothers Network love Philadelphia for all it is, and all of the people who have lived here and moved on and out, and still, like Coleman Domingo, still honor and love their West Philly and Philly in general. And we see a lot of that at the Brothers Network. We see a lot of people come through Philadelphia and or who were here, either they're playwrights or artists or thinkers of all kinds, intellectuals. So I think Philly really has a great central place where there's so much art and talent. In our parting time, tell us what you want to tell us specifically about. We always talk about our positive things, but I want to go a little negative here. Who are the people who said you couldn't do it? Who are the people who said, oh, this guy's he's never going to be able to do it? He's just, he's going to be a basketball player, or he's going to be not a playwright, but a rapper who raps on the corner for the rest of his life at on Broad Street. Who were the people who said, not their names, but just
Oh no! Oh, this is fun. Shout out to haters. And honestly, if I were a braver person, I would have been rapping on the corner. That I sneak rap and hip hop into every play I write. But that's a scarier career path. Shout out to Mr. Parasink, my 4th grade teacher, who gave me all B's on my report card, even though I had only gotten like 100s in all of my work. And so we came in, Miss Parasik, Republican, like mustached white man, and my mom was like, why do you have all B's? And I was like, I don't know, here's all of my work, it's all 100s. So we walked in the next day and the teacher was like, I don't think Dave is trying hard enough. And I was like, and we were like, what do you mean? How am I not trying hard enough? These are the highest scorers. And shout out to my mom, who got all the grades changed to A's. So
that's really great.
He was one who he really gave me a hard time, because I was doing well very easily in his easy ass class, and he was upset about that.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, I'm going to drop it there, but we'd love to have another conversation with you. Only because I think that we could go on and forever and talk about those people who gave us B's when we were doing A work, and we're kind of like F you to those people, you know?
yeah,
We'll have
yeah.
to find him and send this interview to him if he's still with us, and let
Yeah,
him
well,
know
I don't know
how,
if he is, but
yeah, let him
definitely
know
watch
how
this interview.
his negativity flourished tremendous amounts of confidence and positivity and storytelling far beyond that class in that classroom. And you have always been a gift, and unfortunately he was just not prepared to receive it. So I applaud you personally and professionally, and I look forward to sharing and learning more, sharing with others and learning more about your personal trajectory. Again, thank you for your time and attention today.
Thank you. This has been very fun.
All right.